Hi there and welcome back to Mind-Body Relationship, where we discuss the mind, the body, and the relationship. Hi Laurie, how are you today?
Well, hello Emerald, how are you today?
I'm good.
That's good. We're going along.
We're trucking along.
We're trucking. Anyway, today I thought might be a really good topic of conversation was to do with the beginning of what it is that first comes up, which is our little chime that you get to see, which I thought you did a really great job on putting together, by the way.
Thank you.
I think it looks really good. This chime actually created the basis for our logo for the Counselling House. And the reasoning is because I came up through the ministry stream in regards to becoming a counselor. Many people come through different streams in order to be a counselor, because the truth is it's life experience that actually really makes fabulous, health professionals, whether they be doctors, nurses, support workers, whatever it is that might be. The more life experience you've had, then the more it is that you're able to give good guidance. And so for myself, I started in the ministry stream, becoming a minister, and then once it is that I recognized that one-on-one counseling seemed to me to be way more of a benefit than trying to talk to a group, a congregation, then I started going towards pastoral counseling, and then towards becoming a marriage and family therapist, and then later on doing my master's of counseling psychology, and becoming a social worker and a psychotherapist, as well as an art therapist. So basically my title is Reverend Dr. Laurie Ponsford-Hill.
Yeah.
I know.
It's a good chunk.
That was too long.
No.
Okay.
No, just your title is a big chunk.
It is. Yes. We came up with our logo from this little baby here, which is to do with an angel.
Yeah.
Right? And how I looked at that in regards to counseling was as a guardian angel.
Yeah.
Right? So we guide people through difficult times.
Yeah, some sort of support system.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, right? And when I think about biblically in regards to the different names of Jesus, one name attributed to Jesus was Wonderful Counselor. And so when I think about Wonderful Counselor, as well as what we do here as we guide people through difficult and trying times, is that for me, that is a perfect fit.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Jesus giving advice, walking with people, being supportive, giving them something to believe in, that there's something bigger than them and whatever the difficult or trying times are in their life. And so that to me was a wonderful representation of how it is that we need to have some sort of basis in order to be able to overcome, be resilient with whatever it is that we are being presented with.
That's a really good point. Like believing in something that's bigger than you, but not diminishing it to a point where it's like, well, then what's the point?
Mm-hmm.
Something that can allow you to look at the big picture, but also recognize that you do have a purpose being here.
Exactly. And I mean, the basis of marriage and family therapy is that it's a systemic view, meaning that we're looking at the system of the relationship. So it's not each individual, but it's bigger than that. And it's not linear, right? It's not necessarily A plus B equals C. It's how it is that people are interacting. So it's more of a circular way of looking at things, right? So it's the individual, where it is that they've come from, their family of origin, but also what it is that's happening now and what's happening systemically outside of the family, what's happening in society. It's a big picture view.
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. The other element in regards to our chime here is that you notice that it's actually really situated as a house.
Yeah.
And the one thing that I really identified with to do with this is that the counseling house is actually really a house of many rooms.
Right.
Definitely. Meaning that we all have a place here. Yes. And so when we think of that biblically, it actually really has a definition and comes from somewhere.
My Father's house has many rooms. If that were not so, would I have told you that I am going there to prepare a place for you?
Yes. And that's from John 14:2.
Yep.
Right? New International Version. The truth is that we all have a place. And it's very interesting actually too. So not only systemically when we think about our family and how it is that we all are very, very different within one house, the truth is inside of us, we all have different elements of who it is that we are. I term them masks, different parts, right, that are intertwining at play at all times that we've developed throughout our lifespan, right? And so when I think about the different parts, I also think about the different rooms. We actually have different rooms inside of us, all very vital, all very important. They've all come from somewhere and they all are about something. When I think of Wonderful Counselor, I also think of the fruits of the Spirit. And the fruits are
charity, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, forbearance, mildness or gentleness, faith, modesty, self-control, and chastity.
Very good. When we think about church, when we think about the house of God, the viewpoint used to be that God was in an actual house, right? And so we went to visit God at church, right? And then we walked out the door and left God in that house. But now we have a different way in which we look at it, that we actually really embody the Holy Spirit, Jesus, God, however it is that you want to look at it. We walk around with our own access to our own true self. And if you look at that, it's the Holy Spirit or Jesus or God, however it is that you want to look at that, we walk around with that. The house is actually inside of us, right? So no longer locked within a house, but that we actually are walking in the door with our own sense of God, right? Our own true self.
Right.
So the different parts can cover over who it is that we are. And so we sometimes can't get in touch with that core sense of self. And that's a part of what it is that we do here. That's a part of, Wonderful Counselor, is the unearthing of all of those different parts, those different masks that we've accumulated over time, so that we actually really can get in touch with who it is that we are at our core, our true identity, our true self. Not a part, but our basis of being. And so what I found very interesting, based upon what it is that you just described, right, the fruits of the Spirit, when we think about our self and our true self, how do we know when it is that we're in contact with our true self? So when we're in contact with our true self, this is the description of how you know that that's who it is that you really are. Curiosity, caring, creativity, courage, calmness, connectedness, clarity, compassion, presence, patience, persistence, perspective, and playfulness. So when we have a look at both of those definitions, historically, biblically, compared to the description of how it is that we actually each have an internal family system, isn't it interesting how the wording is very similar?
Yes.
Yeah. So I thought that that was very insightful. For me, the impact that that had for me is that my center core, each one of us, our own center core, our true self, is important and significant. And it's about who it is that we are and how it is that we need to be in order to know our own authenticity, in order to be our own authentic self. We all put on masks, right? We all have our different parts, right? And the truth of the matter is that who we are at our center, our authentic self, that's what it is that we need to come into contact with. That's our true belief system, right?
Yeah.
And we're all walking around having a belief system. We do what we do based upon that belief system. And that belief system is really important. It's come from somewhere. And generally speaking, today, in this day and age, it's come from a multitude of different places. You know, a little bit of it might be biblical, a little bit of it might be Buddhist, a little bit of it might be from different areas of the world, right? Because we've all had different experiences, different education, different places that we've come from. And a lot of the times what happens now is we integrate it all together in order to come up with whatever it is that works for us.
Excellent. Laurie said that how she self-identifies is by looking back at the biblical sources and then translating them to her current day beliefs, right?
Yes, an integrative kind of method. That's right.
So for me, I definitely grew up as a Christian. I grew up going to church. And for myself, I really identified with the 12 fruits of the Spirit and the 7 gifts of the Holy Spirit. And as I kind of branched out from going to church and really kind of diving into the real world and seeing how everyone works, and especially when I started getting into comedy, I kind of realized that not all of the time did it really reinforce my belief system. Especially it was very difficult being around a community that kind of chastised people for having a belief system. And so now what I'm trying to do with my comedy is bring basically the 12 fruits of the spirits, the joy and the kindness and the goodness and, you know, the modesty to it. That's the character that I put on stage, is a very cute, kind of modest and kind person.
Oh, interesting.
And so I think that it really translates to who I am now, because that's who I want to be. I don't want to be, I respect the comedians who do this, but I don't want to be the kind of comedian who goes on stage and picks on people. I don't want to be the kind of comedian who just really tells the horrible stories of their lives and how sad and depressed they are, because that's not who I want to be. I don't want to be sad and depressed. I want to spread joy and be joyful.
Oh, very good. So and I know from what it is I've seen of your comedy that you are very curious.
Yes,
right?
very curious.
Yeah,
yes.
you do crowd work, and so you're very curious as to who it is that's actually sitting in the audience.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's interesting as well, because when I do, people really enjoy that. Because what I do is when I pick on someone, I ask them something about themselves, and then I kind of make it into a good thing. Very kind of a quirky, weird way of doing it, but never a, punching down sort of way.
Right. Yeah. So bringing forward their true selves.
Yeah.
Right? The caring, compassionate, patient, center core of who it is that they are.
Yes, and celebrating that.
Exactly. And I think that that's really the key.
Mm-hmm.
Something really to focus on, to identify with, right? So if you have difficulty with the word God, you have difficulty with the word Jesus, you even have difficulty with the word Spirit, perfectly fine, right? Another way to look at it is, who is it that I am, my center core, my true self? Well, thank you very much, Emerald. That was really interesting to hear how it is that you look at doing your stand-up.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for talking about us and talking about your symbol and your logo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They all come from somewhere.
Yeah, that's very true. And so if you enjoyed this podcast, please feel free to subscribe and stay subscribed. Give us a like and comment down below if you have any other topics you would like us to discuss.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Thank you so much. Bye for now.
Bye. Exactly. And I know that when it is that we talk about belief systems, that in this day and age, things have really changed over the period of time in the last few decades. So I think that when people think of belief systems, they think of religiosity.
Right. Sure. Yeah, definitely.
And then religiosity started to change over to spirituality.
Yes.
And then spirituality even seemed to change over, it seemed to me, to, nothing.
Yeah, I found out too.
So religiosity sort of had like a kind of a negative context, then it transitioned into spirituality, and that even began to have a negative context, and then a lot of the times, as it is that those transitions were happening, people still, when it was they were doing the census, were identifying themselves based upon their parents' religion. And even that started to change.
Yeah.
There was no acknowledgement any longer in regards to the parents' religion. They had the younger generation started to transition away from even that.
Yeah, definitely. I know that when I was in college and I was a part of the comedy community, it was really looked down upon and shunned to be a part of any kind of religion. And even if you said that you were spiritual or you believed in the universe or whatever the new aged way to say I believe in something, it would be completely shunned. Like everyone sort of pressured you almost into saying, well, I'm definitely an atheist. Even if there was no support really at all in religion or belief, really.
Yeah, it's become really interesting. And even now I find when I ask people, do you have a belief system? I find that sometimes that even triggers such reactivity, right? That there's an implication that what I'm identifying is religiosity, which I find so very interesting, right? But when I look at belief systems, I mean, I look at things that we say to ourselves that we actually really believe in.
Yeah.
And those little statements have huge impact and are a huge driving force for how it is that we live our life. So, for example, a statement would be something like, this too will pass.
For sure, yeah.
One day at a time. Do you have a belief statement that you say to yourself?
It'll all work out.
It'll all work out. So I think that is what it is that is extremely important, right? Because you have to be able to identify what it is that you truly believe in. And sometimes it's not a huge movement. Sometimes it is a huge movement. But as I say, each to their own.